Good afternoon and welcome to the Bradenton Kiwanis Club Patriots Day celebration. My name is Janine Amick, President of Bradenton Kiwanis. Will you join with me as we sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, and then it will be my pleasure to have the invocation given by immediate past President Judge Ed Nichols.
Bow your heads. Dear Lord, on this Veterans Day program that also happens to be Election Day, please bless this great country of ours, the greatest country in the history of mankind. Bless the veterans that are gathered here with us today. Let them know that we are always grateful for their service, not just on Veterans Day. Bless all the members of the armed service. Keep them safe. Keep them out of harm's way. Let them also know that we are so extremely grateful for their sacrifice. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and pray with me. I'm going to say God is good, and you're going to say all the time. And we're going to do that 3 times. God is good.
All the time.
God is good.
All the time.
God is good.
All the time.
Amen.
Good afternoon and welcome to the 2016 Kiwanis Club of Bradenton Patriots Day Luncheon. It's a pleasure to welcome all of you, and I hope I'm reaching the back of the room. Great. We'd like to start with the traditional presentation of our colors, and I will now ask the Honor Guard from American Legion Kirby Stewart, Post 24, consisting of the Guard Captain, Drew Thomas, Tom Miller, and Richard Lanois, to present the colors. Please rise.
Color guard, halt, left, hey, order, halt, present, halt.
Our Kiwanis President, Janine Amick, will now lead us in our national anthem. You want to do the pledge first? Okay, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
O'er the Right. Hey. Forward. Hunt.
Please be seated. We're very pleased to have some very special guests joining us today. And I'd like to start by introducing retired Brigadier General Jerry Neff and Jerry's wife Judy. And if you please give them a warm welcome. And I also like to announce that General Neff was our 2014 Manatee County Veteran of the Year. Also with us today is our County Commissioner and retired Air Force Colonel Larry Bussell, F-4 fighter pilot, Vietnam. And Larry was our 2013 Manatee County Veteran of the Year. Also with us today, always special guests, are retired Navy Commander Brad Smith, Navy fighter pilot, and his wife, Kirsten. I'll be saying more about this next individual in a few minutes, but we have Dr. Len Shirosky, U.S. Navy veteran, and his wife, Marilyn. And they're here today for the presentation of the program itself. And Len is the 2002 Manatee County Veteran of the Year. We also have Bob Green, U.S. Air Force Master Sergeant retired, and Manatee County 2008 Veteran of the Year. We also have Miss Joyce Hart. Joyce is the past president of the Military Officers Association of America, Bradenton chapter, and Joyce also represents us on the Manatee, as a Manatee member of the MOA National Board of Directors. Thank you, Joyce. Carl Hunsinger, Chief Master Sergeant, United States Air Force retired, is the current chairman of our Manatee County Veterans Council. Welcome, Carl. And I'm told that we have in the audience a veteran of World War II, and I hope he was able to join us. And his name is John Cadetto. Mr. Cadetto, are you here? I guess he wasn't able. Oh, he is. Sir, would you please stand? Can't stand? Yeah. Oh. Oh. Thank you for your service. To my right is Chief Warrant Officer 4, Don Courtney, U.S. Army retired. Don is the immediate past chair of the Manatee County Veterans Council, and he was our 2003 Veteran of the Year for Manatee County. Don's sister Allison and her Marine Corps veteran husband Jim are also with us today. Way in the back. Welcome. And our condolences go out to Don and Allison on the loss of their father just 2 nights ago. Mr. Murray Courtney achieved the age of 99, and he would have been 100 years old this coming May if he had not passed. And our hearts go out to Don and Allison and the entire Courtney family. When one of our veteran members grieves, we all grieve as well. And so we certainly wish Mr. Courtney rest in peace, and we also offer our condolences and best wishes for comfort and peace to the entire Courtney family. Before introducing our next two guests, I would like to mention that we have a change in our Veteran of the Year program this year. Back in June the 13th of this year, Manatee County lost a true patriot. It was Colonel Fred Graves, who gave 26 years of his life to the service of his country in the United States Air Force and the Medical Service Corps. And after his retirement, Fred and Norma here in Bradenton worked endless hours, excuse me, helping veterans and other members of our community over and over and time again. Fred's loss was a great blow to our veterans community, and in recognition of his service, the Veterans Council moved that going forward this year in 2016 and every year hereafter, the Manatee County Veteran of the Year will be known as the Colonel Frederick J. Graves Veteran of the Year for Manatee County. Fred's wife Norma is with us today, and Norma, if you please stand, it's great to have you here. And we also happen to have in our presence the person who this coming Friday, will be recognized as the 2016 Manatee County Veteran of the Year, Frederick J. Graves Veteran of the Year, Colonel, U.S. Army retired, wounded combat veteran, 1966 graduate of the Military Academy at West Point, Colonel Gil Ruderman. Welcome to all of our special guests. Next month, our nation will be observing the 75th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, ceremonies and events will be held at the USS Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Today's luncheon program is also an observance of that attack. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, U.S. Navy veteran Dr. Len Sharatsky, who will also give a presentation on Japan and Pearl Harbor. And I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Dr. Sharatsky. He is a native of Chicago, Illinois. He enlisted in the U.S. Navy at age 17, and upon his discharge in 1956, he enrolled in DePaul University, where he earned his undergraduate degree. He ultimately earned a doctorate degree in educational administration from Northern Illinois University and went on to earn over 40 years of credit in public school education. In 1990, the New American School Design Corporation, which was created from America's business community, issued a request for proposals for designs to break the mold with a new American school in the 21st century. Out of nearly 700 responses, Dr. Sharatsky's proposal was one of only 11 that were accepted. The President of the United States and Secretary of Education referred to Dr. Sharatsky's design as the single most important educational project in America. Dr. Sharatsky has given presentations in Europe, Australia, and numerous states throughout our country. He believes strongly in the relationship between military, veterans, and education. Len and his wife Marilyn, right here to my left, a classroom school teacher of 32 years, retired to Bradenton in 1988. Len was elected to serve as chairman of the American Patriotism Task Force, which is the forerunner of what has become the annual Kiwanis Club of Bradenton's Patriots Day Luncheon. Len was selected as the Manatee County Veteran of the Year in 2002, and he is now in his 13th year serving as host of Manatee County Educational Television's America's Veterans, which recognizes distinguished military veterans for their military service as well as their service to our community. It's a great pleasure to present educator and historian Dr. Len Sharatsky.
I have two things. One, if you were born or if you were simply a child during World War II, would you please raise your hand? How many people do we have? Yeah, quite a few. Okay. Second thing, on your tables, there are some maps. I thought it might be a good idea for you to take a look at that map. For many of us, it's just remembering what happened in the Pacific during World War II. And when you look at the map, you can see where Pearl Harbor is located, and you can see where Japan and China are located. Notice where Korea is, for those of you who served in the Korean War. And then if we go over a little bit to the left, you see French Indochina, which is now Vietnam. And for those who served, will remember that. A couple of cities just to mention to you because they're not on the map. Off the coast of China is the island of Formosa, also known as Taiwan. And on the coast of China at that point is Hong Kong. If you look over at Thailand, way over to your left, come halfway down the peninsula, and there's where you would find the city of Rangoon. And further down the peninsula, all the way to the end, is Singapore. The only other place that I'll mention that is not on this map, and I apologize for that, I do make a reference to the Solomon Islands. The Solomon Islands would be off to the right, and if you see Guadalcanal, and if you went a little bit to the right and down, that's where the Solomons are actually located. Japan is made up of 4 major islands, but 600 smaller islands all around Japan. And up and down that Pacific area, you'll see we had to battle for every one of those islands. I spent some of my time on the island of Guam. That was after I waited till the war was over before I would go, because it is so jungly that if you take one step off the path, no one could even see you. And it was vicious fighting, one-on-one. Jerry mentioned that I had something to do with public schools and teaching. And so I am going to teach you a little lesson today about Japan and Pearl Harbor. And at the end of the presentation, I will give you a test. I tried. History may be defined as the knowledge of or the study of the past. A French custom was that in order to be called history, an event must be at least 100 years old. Virtually every facet of history is debated and argued over. There may be several different opinions regarding the very same event. And in every such situation, you have to make your own decision as to what is the truth. Did Betsy Ross really design the first American flag? Did the people attack the Bastille in Paris, or was it the mob? Was World War II started by Tojo or FDR? A point about American history is that all of it is contained in a relatively short period of time. I am 81 years old, and that means that I was born in 1935. On the day of my birth, there was another man who was 81 years old at that time. That person was born in 1854. And on the day that person was born, in 1854, there was one other person who was 81 years old. That person was born in 1773. That means that the entire history of the United States occurred within the space of only 3 lifetimes. And Marilyn, this is the flag of Japan, and it's called Hinamaru. which means the circle of sun. Japan's name translates to the land of the rising sun. The Japanese people were very dependent upon the sun to harvest their rice, so the flag was meaningful for them, and this remains their flag, the flag of Japan, today. The rising sun flag was originally used by feudal lords from the 12th to the 19th centuries. These were the times of the samurai. With them, a military culture emerged, at least partly as a response to the Mongol threats of the 13th century. However, on May 15, 1870, it was adopted as the war flag of the Imperial Japanese Army. And on October 7, 1889, it was adopted as the naval ensign of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Japan lived in self-imposed isolation until 1853, when Commodore Matthew Perry led 4 American ships into Tokyo Bay, and he opened that nation to foreign influence. In 1868, the Empire of Japan was proclaimed, and the country entered a period of rapid industrialization and trading dominance in East Asia. In 1894-95, Japan went to war with China, mostly over Korea. The war resulted with the total recognition of the independence of Korea. China also ceded Taiwan and other islands and gave Japan the right to use the Yangtze River for trading purposes. In 1904, Japan defeated Russia in Manchuria during the Russo-Japanese War. Teddy Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize because he helped to bring that war to an end. In 1914, Japan joined Great Britain in World War I and gained some islands from Germany, and they took over the German base in China. In 1923, Great Britain ended its alliance with Japan, signaling apprehension of Japan's growing power in East Asia. War between Japan and the United States had been a possibility that each nation's military forces planned for as early as the 1920s. The real tension did not begin until the 1931 Japanese invasion of Manchuria. The Japanese envisioned a greater East Asia prosperity sphere in the Pacific. For that to happen, they would need more resources, especially oil and steel. Americans didn't want war, but public opinion became largely anti-Japanese when they invaded Nanking in 1937. That incident is known as the Massacre or the Rape of Nanking. 50,000 Japanese troops attacked Nanking on December 13, 1937, with orders to kill all captives. Nanking was the nationalist capital, and the population was about 600,000. The Japanese massacred as many as 300,000 of the people living there, and they raped up to 80,000 women. In addition to the murderous murder of so many, the Japanese attacked the USS Panay, an American gunboat anchored in the Yangtze River outside Nanking. They claimed that they did not know it was an American ship, and they paid an indemnity. However, they had sunk an American ship, killed 1 sailor, and wounded 43 others. That same year, 1937, Captain Claire Chennault, the retired Army Air Force, developed the plan for the AVG, the American Volunteer Group, better known as the Flying Tigers. On Christmas Day, 1941, a total of Japanese bombers and 48 fighters struck Rangoon. The AVG knocked down 23 of them with 6 probables, but the AVG did not lose a single aircraft. Captain Chennault's Flying Tigers was one of the greatest fighting forces ever. In 31 encounters over Burma and Thailand, this tiny force met a total of 1,000 Japanese planes. They destroyed 217 enemy planes with a probable 43 more. The Tigers lost 16 P-40s, 4 pilots in the air, 1 killed while strafing, and 1 was taken prisoner. Chennault had been encouraged by Madame Chiang Kai-shek. She invited him to come to China to be the trainer of the Chinese Air Force, and he did so. On September 27, 1940, Japan, Germany, and Italy officially formed the Tripartite Pact, creating the Axis powers. In October, President Roosevelt told Admiral James Richardson, the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet, that sooner or later the Japanese would make a mistake and we would go to war. U.S. intelligence never thought of Pearl Harbor as a potential target. If war was to come, it would be in the Philippines, Indochina, Thailand, or the Russian Far East. The U.S. and Japan entered negotiations in 1941 with the hope of improving relations. Compromises with China and as any part of the negotiations was rejected by General Hideki Tojo, the war minister. The population of Japan at that time was just over 73 million. The population of the United States topped 130 million. But the Japanese government was unimpressed with that. As a precaution, FDR moved the bulk of the Pacific Fleet to Pearl Harbor. He thought that this would have a restraining influence on the Japanese. Admiral James Richardson protested that move, and consequently, he was removed from command. Pearl Harbor aircraft were lined up wingtip to wingtip out in the open to prevent sabotage. These actions resulted in conspiracy theories. With negotiations underway, planning for the attack began in early 1941. The leader of the planning was Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who studied in the United States War College. The attack was approved by an Imperial Conference over summer and by a second Imperial Conference in the fall. All that while, Japanese pilots were being trained and their ships were being prepared for the execution of the attack. The pilots were trained to fly over a 5,000-foot-high mountain and then drop to 25 feet in elevation before dropping torpedoes. Final approval for the Pearl Harbor plan was given by Emperor Hirohito at the beginning of December. Japan alleged divine right to verify Hirohito's rule. By late November 1941, Admiral Chuchi Naguma had his carrier force assembled under strict radio silence. The main force had 6 aircraft carriers with 408 planes available. In escort, there were 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, 9 destroyers, 23 fleet submarines, and several mini submarines. In addition, there were 8 oilers for underway fueling. Ultimately, the Japanese fleet was moved to 200 miles north of Oahu. The first of 2 waves was launched at 0753 hours, about 1 o'clock in Chicago. The strike leader sent out the signal, Tora, 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 which meant attack now. The attack began just before 0800 hours Hawaiian time. In less than 2 hours, the attack was over. 8 battleships were sunk or damaged. The Arizona went to the bottom with 1,177 sailors aboard. Also sunk or damaged were 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, 1 mine layer. Additionally, 188 aircraft were destroyed, and another 159 were damaged. More than 2,400 Americans were killed, and 1,178 others were wounded. The Japanese lost 29 aircraft and 64 servicemen killed. 1 mini-sub ran aground, and 1 sailor from that sub was captured. An American survivor said, "We were as unprepared as we could possibly be." The PBY was my favorite aircraft. There were 33 PBYs stationed at Pearl. 3 survived, and only because they were out on scouting duty when Pearl Harbor was attacked. Minutes after the attack had begun, a message went out to all ships at sea and persons anywhere. Air raid Pearl Harbor. This is no drill. Within the next 7 hours, there were coordinated attacks on U.S.-held Philippines, Guam, Wake Island, and also on Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong. The next day, FDR gave his famous Day of Infamy speech, and World War II began. In his speech, FDR did say, "So help us God," which is often overlooked in recent translations. Admiral Chester Nimitz later said, "It was God's mercy that our fleet was in Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Had they gone out to meet the Japanese, they probably all would have been sunk in deep water with all hands. Battleships were no match for aircraft carriers. We probably would have lost 20,000 dead." The goals set by the Japanese were achieved, but only for a very short time. American morale was boosted by songs such as "Let's Remember Pearl Harbor," "Buy Your Bonds Today," "Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition," "Coming In on a Wing and a Prayer," and a super popular "Goodbye Mama, I'm Off to Yokohama." Not to mention Spike Jones' 2 band songs, "Little Bo Peep Has Lost Her Sheep," and "You're a Sap, Mr. Jap." Every single Japanese carrier participating in that attack was sunk later. And the Pearl Harbor planner, Admiral Yamamoto, was sought out, and on April 18, 1943, his plane was shot down and he was killed in the Solomon Islands. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito made a radio broadcast announcing Japan's surrender. Citizens of Japan had never heard his voice before. He was allowed to remain as emperor until his death in 1989. The current emperor of Japan is Akihito, the son of Hirohito. Hideki Tojo was forced to resign as the war minister in 1944 after the American victory in Saipan. Following Japan's surrender in September 1945, he tried to commit suicide. His doctor used charcoal to mark the spot on his chest where Tojo should aim. He missed and shot himself in the stomach. He survived, but the nationalists considered his act as cowardly because he should have used a samurai sword. He was hanged for war crimes on December 23, 1948. Please always remember the thousands of innocents who died that day at Pearl Harbor, and remember the price of poor intelligence and the lack of preparedness. Thank you.
Dr. Shirosky, thank you so very much for that very informative and interesting presentation. I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone that I learned a lot today that I never knew before. And it's a real honor to have someone of your credentials, along with your wife, Marilyn, who were just real committed to the education of youngsters over many, many years. So thank you very much for honoring us with your presence today, both of you. Yeah, Dr. Swarovski wanted me to mention that he has brought a stack of photographs and posters of scenes from the war in the Pacific, and we will have them up here along the table at the end of today's program, and so you're welcome to come up and take a look at them, and I think that Dr. Swarovski would be happy to perhaps answer any questions that you may have about what he's brought to share with us. Before I go any further, I have an apology to issue. I overlooked an extremely important guest earlier when I introduced Colonel Larry Bussell, our county commissioner as well. I overlooked that his wife Edie is with us today as well. And Edie, I apologize, and welcome, please, welcome. On December 7th, a memorial wreath will be placed at the Punch Bowl, which is the cemetery in Pearl Harbor. The wreath will be presented by Hannah Witham, who is the daughter of our Kiwanis president, Janine Amick. And I just want to say a few words about Hannah at this time. It's a distinct pleasure to introduce her. She's a junior at Bradenton River High School, where she is actively involved in school, sports, and community activities. She's also been a member of the DeSoto Young Marines for 8 years and has earned the prestigious billet of Regimental Sergeant Major, among many other accomplishments. And I literally could go on and on about this young lady. Hannah represented our community in 2014 at the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day in Hawaii, and she and her mother will be returning to Hawaii this year for the 75th observance on December 7th. Hannah and Janine will be presenting a memorial wreath from the Kiwanis Club of Bradenton, the DeSoto Young Marines, and also Manatee County, Florida. And it is my honor to present the wreath to Hannah, Janine, and I believe Hannah's school principal, Miss Gilray, Dr. Gilray, is here as well. And it would be wonderful if all three of you could come up and give me the pleasure and honor of presenting the wreath to you at this time. Thank you so much, and Hannah, thank you for honoring us in such a way that you are, when you go there on December 7th, we'll be thinking about you and praying that you have safe travel and an enjoyable trip as well. Thank you so much. Many who served our nation in wartime became prisoners of war or are still unaccounted for and are missing in action. In front of the room is a table which represents our POWs and our MIAs. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce U.S. Army Chief Warrant Officer Retired Donald Courtney, who will describe for us the meaning and significance of the table. Don?
The table is for one who cannot be with us today. It's symbolic of American prisoners of war and those still missing in action. The single chair represents our POW MIA's loneliness. The black napkin stands for the emptiness that their presence has left in the hearts of families and friends who remember and miss them. The overturned glass and plate remind us that they cannot be with us today. The red rose and ribbon symbolize the sacrifice and hardships endured by them and their love of their country that led them to such sacrifices. The white tablecloth and vase stand for the hope that we may someday have our POWs and MIAs back with us. The Bible is for faith, or whatever form that we may have for each of us, which sustains our missing warriors and their loved ones through the immense difficulties they are enduring. The yellow candle and ribbon remind us that we must never abandon our work for the returnees and the complete accounting of our missing countrymen, and that we must never forget them. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We are honored to have with us today a very distinguished veteran who represents the meaning of the prisoner of war missing in action table. Commander U.S. Navy retired Brad Smith. On March 25, 1966, while on his 80th combat mission, Brad was shot down in the vicinity of the city of Vinh, North Vietnam. Brad was severely injured and was captured by the North Vietnamese. Brad was a prisoner of war for just short of 7 years before his release on February 13, 1973. Brad and Kristen, please stand. Okay, just a minute, we're going to do the service songs. And as we play your service song, please stand up, and if your spouse is with you, let them stand up and be recognized also. United States Army. United States Navy. United States Coast Guard. There's always one coastie in the house. United States Air Force. United States Marine Corps. Thank you. On behalf of the Manatee County Veterans Council and the veterans here today, I want to thank the Kiwanis Club of Bradenton for this luncheon and for the generous support of $1,000 donated towards our parade and service. And while we're talking about that, I'd like to invite all of you to the parade and service at Friday, Sutton Lamb Park, Veterans Day. The music will start at 9:30. This parade will start at 10:15, and the service will start at 11 o'clock. I hope to see all of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Before I turn the program back to our Kiwanis president, Janine Amick, I also want to offer a big thanks to the American Legion Kirby Stewart Post 24 Color Guard for honoring us today with the presentation of the colors. Our veteran guests and their spouses, all veterans know that they could not have done what they did if it weren't for their spouse. So would all the spouses please stand for additional recognition, please. We owe a big thanks to Charles Clapsaddle and the great staff of Manatee Educational Television. They honor us year after year by being here for this very special program, and I really think that Charles is cloned. I see him everywhere I go, and I also know he goes a lot of places that I don't go, and I don't know how he does it, and this week's a very busy week for him and his crew. But Charles, thank you so very much for all you do for us. Special thanks to my good friend Don Courtney, and again, our deepest sympathies on the loss of your father. We'll be thinking about you and your family. And a great big thanks to our guest speaker, Dr. Len Chorosky and his wife Marilyn, for honoring us today and giving us that really outstanding and very informative presentation. And especially to the Kiwanis Club of Bradenton, as Don mentioned, we're so grateful for what you do each year for the veterans of Manatee County, honoring us in the way that you do. And we can't tell you how much we really do appreciate that. And we also thank you for that very generous contribution, as Don mentioned, towards the expenses associated with our Veterans Day Parade and Service this Friday. Kiwanis President Jean Amick will now lead us in the singing of God Bless America. Please rise.
A great big round of applause to our chair of this wonderful presentation for Patriots Day, Jerry Kuntz, please. Thank you to each and every one of you for participating here. We hope to see you at the parade, and you're always welcome back Tuesdays at 12:15 to the Bradenton Kiwanis lunch. With that, we are adjourned.